without this, can't you? Welcome to this year's MAUI Symposium. This is our 40th year, and I think it's going to be a very exciting one. Our board organizes this symposium every year to sort of remind you that we're here, that Receiving Day is sort of coming up, and hopefully to inspire each of you. My name is Rose Potter, and I'm the chair of the juror committee this year. I want to thank each of you for joining us and choosing to spend part of your afternoon here in support of Art Maui. I'm very honored to introduce our juror. During last year's exhibit, our 2017 juror, Sally French, invited me to visit Oahu with her to see the Honolulu Biennial. And when we got over there, we actually got to see Andrew Binkley, who's one of the artists. He's here today. And I got a really lovely tour of an amazing community art event. And I returned just feeling very inspired by what had been produced and inspired by people that had that vision. So I wasn't alone. In addition to almost 100,000 visitors and a $38 million impact on the local economy, the biennial garnered glowing international press. In calling the biennial one of the top art events of 2017, Vanity Fair said that the arrival of the International Arts Festival makes a case for Hawaii as a well-positioned hub for creativity rather than a distant paradise. And so here today, I get to introduce to you Isabella Ellahah Hughes, co-founder and director of the Honolulu Biennial Foundation, art critic, curator, editor, and food and beverage entrepreneur for a good measure. So please join me in welcoming Isabella, our 2018.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm so glad the biennial keeps, it's like a gift that keeps giving. It brings into my life so many amazing creative people living in Hawaii that I didn't know, and they come up and they say, I went to Honolulu Biennial, you're that biennial chick, aren't you? And I said, yes, and then we make connections like this. So thank you to Art Maui for having me today to be here to give you a talk. I don't have much prepared. I actually thought I'd tell you my life story about why I'm in art, which will then probably get to what I tend to look for when I juror. Juror. Yes, very official term. So I was born and raised on Oahu. I grew up all over different parts of Honolulu, but from age of 12 onwards I lived in Paoa, so right by the downtown area. And, you know, growing up, my dad is from Hawaii. He's Kama'aina, 4th generation. My mother is from Iran, 1st generation immigrant. And they really, really instilled in me like a deep interest in world cultures, in art. I went to a Waldorf school for a time before I went to Punahou. That absolutely had a transformative impact in just appreciating art and culture. But really growing up, it was my parents who were avid lovers of knowledge, of reading, and of visiting museums. I think most local kids, they probably spend their weekends at the beach, and I always would prefer to be in Bishop Museum. At the time, it was the Academy of Arts. And the reason I bring up Paoa, where my mother actually lived, the bus route, it would go to the Contemporary Museum. So once I was a teenager and I had my little independence, the literal bus that would go where she lived would go stop at the Contemporary Museum or the Academy of Arts. So around 15 or 16, I did my first internship at the Honolulu Academy of Arts. And that kind of just opened up my life. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be somehow involved in museums and exhibitions. And really for me, art has always just been a vehicle to understand both my community and the larger world around me. Oh, sorry, some people are having a hard time hearing. I'm looking like that. But I think the mic is dead. Is the mic dead? It's not. It can turn? Okay, yeah, I'll turn it on. Is that better? Is that now working? No? Yes? Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Okay, we'll stand up. Okay. So definitely like that. Those were early, very impactful experiences. living and growing up in Honolulu, going to museums, and then traveling quite a bit. I went to undergrad at Boston University, where I studied art history. At the time I went to college, I thought I was actually going to do something in politics, and I did a really interesting internship 11 years ago at a place called the Vera List Center for Art and Politics. And I think that was the first time that I really began to understand the intersection between art being really a platform for social change and for commentary on the world around, and issue-driven art, which was of great interest. And it was a really incredible experience because I was like 20 years old, and Vera List, this philanthropist, she had left a collection to the Vera List Center, which is at the New School University. And to be so young and then to be able to curate in a summer internship and have like a Kara Walker, and to just have, I mean, I'm going to use the word power, but you know, you're 20, 21 years old, you're like, whoa, I have the power to choose the show and put this little, very small show together. But it was very, very exciting, and it sort of opened up the world of curating, because prior to that I thought maybe I'll be an art historian of some sort. And I had a very astute professor realize and tell me, although he hurt my feelings originally, that he didn't think I was really the focused type to go all the way through the PhD. How about I think of a master's? Maybe I could be a director of a museum or a curator. And at the time he broke my heart because I wanted to be just like him and, you know, be a great contemporary art historian. But there is something to be said about those folks who will tell you young in life, and they kind of can foresee where your talents lie. And so now I try to do that to younger people that are sort of I guess we'd call them, I'm mentoring them, although I always feel silly saying that, the same truth, which is really helpful. So after that, I graduated from undergrad, and I began to independently curate shows. And it was like 2008, 2009, and the first big project I worked on was a show called I Ran Home in America. It was really interesting and unusual to grow up. I always was joking I was the wrong kind of hapa. I mean, I'm very much from here. My dad is from here, born and raised, grew up dancing hula, very immersed in Kanaka Maoli culture. But I don't quite look like I'm from here because I'm half Persian. And just being like a child of the 80s was kind of odd, you know, being part Iranian. So there was something very, very autobiographical, much like many artists are. I was really interested in sort of exploring through the vehicle of curating an exhibition, what was it like to be Iranian in America, and that spoof on everyone always saying Iran when it's Iran. And so it was a little show in a gallery in DC, and some of the artists have now risen to quite critical acclaim. I know one of them, Hediye Shafi, she does these beautiful pieces that are all about the word eshk, which means love in Farsi, and at the time that was really her main medium, and there were these scroll works. So she'd do these beautiful scrolls. I wish I actually had made a visual now so you could see what I'm trying to say. But she would wrap all these beautiful colored scrolls, and they would be handwritten on them, eshk, 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 the word of love, and then put almost like a painting together within a frame. And she now has work in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's collection. And that was really neat because I think then I was like 22 or 23, but it was neat to just have these artists, you know, say yes to these really random shows. I had no right whatsoever to be curating these shows. I was just trying to figure my own place in the world out, but then to also grow professionally with them over the years. And I'm so proud of, you know, where everyone is going and growing too. So that was a really, really wonderful first, I guess, exhibit after my internship. And then at the time I entered grad school. So I did my master's at Johns Hopkins in museum studies. And it was during a class that was on curating that I put together this, it was like a thesis proposal. And it was a show called This is Hawaii. I was living in Washington, D.C. I was traveling all over the continent, through Europe, going to, when I could, art fairs, biennials, just trying to figure out what is this art world all about, you know, reading my art forum religiously. And one of the things that I kept noticing was everything I would go to, there'd be no artists from Hawaii. And it was really, really odd because, you know, growing up, and especially that bus line, like living in the Contemporary Museum, I actually saw Sally French's work when I was quite young, and it made a very big impression on me. And being so aware of the artistic talents out of Hawaii, it was quite perplexing to go to all these art events and museum collections and really never see an artist from Hawaii. You know, I mean, everyone, the minute you say, where are you from? Hawaii, they go, oh my God, you know, that look, it's this place that has the most powerful, I mean, Hawaii is the place that has the most powerful hold on the global psyche. I've been to very unusual places. I've given talks in Erbil, Iraq, Yerevan, Armenia, and everybody knows Hawaii. But then when you get to art, there's just this kind of like quizzical look, and then is there art there? And that was just an atrocity to even hear that. So, you know, going back to grad school, I ended up for this class doing this show called This is Hawaii, and it was this hypothetical exhibit that was going to be at the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian, which, as many of you may know, our senators, Akaka and Inoue, were very involved with actually getting that museum there. And so, you know, after I put that project together in an exhibit format for this final class, I thought, why not just make it a real show? Why not? So I guess that could be my motto. It will probably be on my headstone one day. Why not? Just do it, even if you have no right to do it. There was this gallery, it's called Transformer. Does anybody know Transformer? It's a small 200 square foot space on 14th Street in DC. And they are awesome. Actually, some of you should apply to do a show there. I think they do open calls still. They have great visibility. They show artists from all over. And so their executive director, Victoria Reese, was just this really open-minded, cool chick that I wanted to be like. And she was just always doing interesting exhibits and projects, very experimental. And she didn't laugh in my face. I can't even remember how I decided to approach her, but I somehow approached her and found her. I might be part stalker. I have a tendency when I want something to stalk someone till I can you know, get an answer out of them. But I somehow, and I really wish I could remember clearly, but I was able to get in touch with her. I said, hey, let's do this show and let's make it a 2-site exhibit. Let's bring the National Mall audience to Transformer and then bring the Transformer audience, which was, you know, a younger, kind of more edgy crowd, to the National Mall. And somehow we were able to connect with the Smithsonian and MAI, and we literally made it happen. And it was very powerful because when you begin to learn about what it's going to be like to work in a museum, to be a curator, there are all these rules. This is like the most rule-based field you could be in. It's very stodgy. You're not going to curate shit till you're like 35. You know, it's just very orderly and methodical. So it was really neat, like, to be able to realize at a young age, like, that this entrepreneurial energy could kind of be embraced and existed. And it was always by the power of other incredible dynamite women who were like, you're not actually that crazy, and let's break some of the rules and let's do this. So then at the time when I was, then the exhibit that was really a grad project that became an exhibit, and it was a show that featured Solomon Enos, Puni Kukahiko, now Puni Jackson, Carl F.K. Powell, and Micah Tubbs. It opened in 2011. I'd actually ended up moving to the United Arab Emirates. So I know, right? Right. It was the bad recession. I finished grad school. I ended up getting hired by the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Abu Dhabi, who was building the Louvre and the Guggenheim. Wow. I know. For 6 months of my professional life, I've actually been employed by someone in the past 10 years. So I was there, my husband and I moved there. He was working for Edelman, a communications agency. And, you know, I was there for 6 months and I made a lot of money. More money than I'd ever make in the arts, but I did nothing. And do you know Tara Donovan? Anybody know Tara Donovan, the artist? Yeah, so I was a big Tara Donovan fan, and I would like copy her tape sculptures, and then I'd like cry at lunch break and tell my husband, I'm making all this money, and I have this fantasy job with the Guggenheim Louvre, the company building it, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, but I don't do anything all day. I think I have to quit. And he was really supportive, and I began then my independent life, and essentially, yeah, I've only been employed by someone for 6 months. months in 10 years, which is pretty cool and pretty scary. But no, it was awesome. So I was there living in the UAE. I was doing the finishing touches for the show. This is Hawaii that I flew back to DC that opened. That was awesome, and it was super great for my Ka'i Tubbs. I know that he was able to connect with the curator, Candace Hopkins, and he was in Sahakan, the quincentennial for Indigenous art, and there were a lot of amazing doors that opened, and that's sort of always been, I guess, what makes me do what I do. If there's a small way I can help facilitate something for a talented artist for a much bigger door to open, whether it's a show or a biennial, that gives me a great joy and purpose. So yeah, I spent then almost 6 years living in the United Arab Emirates. I was the Dubai editor for a magazine, Art Asia Pacific. I created an exhibition for the U.S. ambassador on cultural diplomacy with American and Emirati artists. And I just did a lot of random exhibits. One of my favorite ones was I collaborated with a woman, Angel Siang Lei. She now is running a section of Art Basel Hong Kong, and we did the mobile art gallery, and I had just had my first child, and it was really funny because I was looking at photos the other day. He's 5 now, so he wants to see like photos of when he was a baby in Dubai, and I was there with the baby Bjorn, the little carrier, that trendy carrier. And what we did with the mobile art gallery is we realized in Dubai they had this amazing fair, Art Dubai. Like, it's like Basel, you know, a big fair or Frieze. Anyhow, you know, it's a certain audience who goes to art fairs, and that's always been problematic to me, like whether it's museums, whether it's art fairs or biennials, it's a cultured class, and, you know, regardless of your socioeconomic bracket, there's just this level that not everyone feels welcome, not everybody feels welcome, and that's so wrong. That is so not at all what artists I know are about, this elitism that permeates the art world. So Angela and I approached the director at the time, another dynamite woman, Antonia Carver. She used to run Badoon magazine. And we said, you know, could we do a mobile art gallery? And we literally got some corporate, like, it's basically like the FedEx of the Middle East, to give us a moving truck, a huge moving truck, and we turned it into an art gallery, like with track lighting. So the photo was me with my, like, kid, my baby, like 3.5-month-old, way too close, like dangerously close to like drills and tools and all the awesome Pakistani and Bangladeshi handymen who were helping, you know, looking at these crazy, my friend was from Hong Kong, I'm from Hawaii, this weird hapa, you know, saying we're going to turn this into a gallery. But it was so fun, and the gallery went to all different parts of the town. And I remember, you know, we did gallery sitting, we had some neat interns, but as much as possible, we wanted to be there to see, is this going to work, or is this going to just be another bougie art thing? And it really worked, because Dubai is one of the most divided, stratified societies I've ever been in. It was an incredible experience, but it was, you know, definitely a shock. And, you know, there's very much like, this is the labor class, and this is the white collar class, and these are the people of this country with passports, and these are the people with that country passports, and people are treated very differently based on their passports. And that was really upsetting. But I remember very vividly one of my favorite experiences were all these wonderful men who were Southeast Asian, and they, you know, they walked by and they were like, what is this? And we realized later we should have called it the free art gallery. We called it mobile art gallery. But the first question was, is it free? And it was like, of course it's free. You could just come on in. So we ended up buying balloons to make it look really festive so people would actually walk into the gallery. And they were like, no, I don't want to come in. I'm all sweaty. And they were laborers, and they were quite dirty. It is very hot and sweaty there, even in March. I mean, I was sweating, and I wasn't a laborer. It's just a very hot place. But they came back the next day, and they like were dressed so nice. They had us take photos. There was one artist, Karim Murtada, who was actually inspired by a lot of the miniatures, Persian miniatures that were also found in Shah Jahan and Pakistan's, and that resonated with these gentlemen who came back, and it was just such a beautiful moment to just connect, and, you know, that was what the art was all about. It was about bringing people together, and the pride that they felt in seeing their cultural reference points in this young Egyptian artist work. So I guess I'm just going on an off tangent of some of my highlights of my happiest memories in the art, right? But no, I mean, just that the lack of equality when it comes to access to art, it's a global problem. It's an upsetting problem. It's nothing that any artist ever means to make happen, yet sometimes you see it permeating everywhere, nearly everywhere. I think Mexico City is one of the few places I've seen that has one of the most diverse art engagement in a community. But yeah, after nearly 6 years there, a lot of fun, I pitched a book to Aperture Foundation, the photography organization in New York, and I edited the first book on the first monograph on an Arab artist, Sama al-Shaibi, and curated a show for her in London at I Am Gallery, and did an essay when she was in Venice Biennale. During that entire time, I was still coming home quite frequently. The beauty of working for yourself, although you have to be really scrappy, is you get more vacation days, and fortunately, my husband, he was getting like 60 vacation days. That's the norm there, which was really, really cool, right? I know, quality of life. So Hawaii is my home. It was always like the deal breaker was, once we had our kids and they were of age and consciousness, we had to move home and raise them here. This is where I'm from. These are the values. It's the only place I could spend the majority of my life in, period. So he understood that, and I began to think, God, what am I going to do with, in the arts here? Because basically on Oahu, there's really, 1 or 2 employment options, and there are not many jobs there. And clearly I'm probably not a very good person to work within a system, since I did quit that one time I tried. But I did try hard, I really did. And my Tara Donovan knockoffs were pretty awesome. But anyhow, so I connected with a couple like-minded individuals. Dr. KJ Baisa, he and I met like 11 years ago when I was doing that internship at the New School in New York. And he was also from Hawaii, and we stayed in touch. And he came to see that show I had created in DC, and we talked about just, that general frustration of lack of awareness on artists from Hawaii. And then another awesome young woman, Catherine Ann Leilani Tudor, my co-founder and director, and we came together under this idea of, let's do a biennial. We looked at all the different models, and Honolulu Biennial came out of frustration and angst. I think that literally is what I wrote I was very tired when I wrote that essay in the catalog, but it was really just out of that frustration and angst of how on earth is this incredible place where I was born and raised, where there is such a proliferation of talent and depth, it's just not even part of the conversation. And all these I'm very fortunate to know a lot of like art people, directors of museums, really big collectors, and they come here, but when they come here they shut their art mind off. They don't even think to come and seek out and experience and connect with artists. And it's like, I know your house in New York or LA or London. You've got XYZ. There are so many artists here. Why don't you furnish your 5th home with local artists, right? Right? No. Yeah, no, we're not talking 2nd homers, we're talking the 5th homers. And it was always shocking to be like, but there's no even art, and I know that you're an art collector, and you'd come here and there'd just be like so far, and and just that lack of engagement. I really believe in just advocating for Hawaii, and I think that's what really brought the 3 co-founders together to launch Honolulu Biennial, just this love of where we're from, and at the same time, being really big fans of the former Contemporary Museum when it merged with the Honolulu Museum of Art. We did lose access to a dedicated space that really had such an impression on me of how I learned about my community, because they showed local contemporary artists, and the world, because they showed national and international contemporary artists. So it was sort of like, twofold, wanting to really have this platform for local, international talents, and ensuring in the format of a biennial that they were being exhibited at the same time, same place. Oh, this is the artist from Hawaii, on that corner, and then this is the artist from Japan. It was all about that equal platform, because that's how it should be. Our talents are tremendous. And then, raising that attention that by the nature of calling it a biennial, way before we had any credibility, people paid attention to us. So we all connected, and in 2014 we officially incorporated. We got our 501c3 status in 2015. And so literally the power of naming and branding is so incredible. The biennial is an example of that. We had a little hokey Twitter. I think we had 225 people following us. And Klaus Biesenbach, you guys know who Klaus Biesenbach is? Chief Curator of MoMA, Director of MoMA PS1. He reached out. because Honolulu Biennial, and he said, like, I think this is a joke, I'm not sure, and then I was like, oh, this is good. If we're not able to pull this off, I'm going to use this as my saving face, I don't want egg on my face, escape plan. Like, we were just like a collective or a movement, because he literally thought we were perhaps a collective or some joke, but he reached out through Twitter somehow, and he said, like, I'm curating a show for the Rockaways, because he was very involved in the Hurricane Sandy relief, and I'd like to collaborate with you. And when he was very young, I think he was 28, he was very, very young, he was one of the co-founders of the Berlin Biennale, so he definitely has that kind of, entrepreneur side that I guess we don't really often talk about artists and creatives as entrepreneurs, and I am all about celebrating that, because everyone in this room, if you're an artist, you're an entrepreneur, you're a hustler, you're figuring it out and making your own path and making things happen. But anyway, it was really neat because he did reach out to us and he said, why don't you send me some names of artists, let me suggest some, and then we can have a party. So he literally, very generously, because we made it abundantly clear we had zero money, everything was being self-invested at the time, and I was pregnant with my second child, which was very scary, to keep working on something for free, which I did for 3 years while managing many other jobs. But he threw us a party at the rooftop with Richard Serra's at MoMA PS1. We had this completely ridiculous coming out party in New York City, and that was our first public event, and I remember saying, like, I gotta give some touch of like real aloha. So I went to the corner store. I was staying at my girlfriend from 7th grade, Bishop Holidays at Punahou, her condo in New York, and I found orchids, and I quickly made an orchid lei so that he actually got an orchid lei that morning. But we were able to invite a lot of art media, arts and culture folk, and it's not like that really put us on the map, but it gave us some small feeling of validation and legitimacy, like these really important movers and shakers are paying some attention, maybe we're onto something. And so then began the really hard struggle of having to prove to the entire community that this could happen and that they could safely donate money to it. There's a lot of ageism in my story. So like being a young woman makes people pretty uncomfortable if you're in a position of power, especially if you're like, hey, I'm raising $2.7 million and I've never thrown a biennial before. And so Catherine and I'm 31, she's 32. At the time, we were really the ones on the ground, doing a lot, the hustling, that's what I'd call it, right? We were doing all the proposals, going to all the meetings. Are you the assistant? Are you Isabella Hughes' assistant? Are you her intern? It was interesting. I mean, like, we definitely, people were like, we were asked in some meetings, where are the men? We strategically recruited board members, some older male board members who understood their sole purpose was kind of just to sit there and be men. We went to some really, really, really incredible meetings where we would do all the presenting, and then all the questions would be to the silent male board member who would then walk out and say, did that just happen? And we were like, yep, but you're a feminist because you're here working on this with us. But no, it took a long time. So we launched with a pre-biennial project. We probably had the record of pre-biennial projects. We did 2 because we needed people to build up trust, and by people I mean all the stakeholders you need to put a biennial together. You need community, you need government, you need corporate donors, you need individual philanthropists, and it's so beautiful because over 60 people, like 60 different groups came together to make the biennial happen, and that the biennial belongs to Hawaii. The biennial is our cities and our states that all came together. But long story short, we did a pre-biennial project in 2014, a prologue called Chain of Fire that had, I think it was 12 or 13 artists. And it was just sort of like a taster of what it could look like. We were really fortunate to have Fumio Nanjo, the director of Tokyo's Mori Art Museum, be our first curator. He was someone that Cage knew, and Fumio was an early adopter and believer, and that gave us some sense of like seriousness. Again, everyone in life is looking for affirmation, right? And when you're starting a biennial, you need a lot of that, especially from the art world. So I think Fumio Nanjo is one of the bravest men out there to say yes to a biennial with no money, no funding, and no experience. And he really was so integral to making this happen. And so then by 2015, we were incorporated, and we were a 501c3, so we could comfortably let people, donate to us, because fiscal conduits, you know what those are? When you don't have your 501c3 status, someone else, you use theirs. That kind of sketched people out a little bit. what was the biennial and why do you have a fiscal conduit? So 2015 was a great year, and yeah, we just really were very focused. I mean, people often ask, how did you do it? And we were relentless. There was no giving up. We had so many champions and mentors, like Miley Meyer from Nemea Hawaii Contact. From day one, she was like, let's do this. Sally French was one of the first people I ever told about this idea. Masami Teraoka, and they all were like, let's make it happen. Jay Jensen. I mean, these are just some of the early people that were really profound in my professional development in Hawaii. Even before I knew them as a child, they'd had an impact on me and a teenager, and they were excited to turn this vision into a reality. And by 2016, we were able to start announcing, because the biennial debuted last year, our artist list. We appointed Nahiraka Mason, a dynamite curator, who for 20 years was the curator at the Auckland Art Gallery. She was the curator, so she worked with Fumio and brought so much depth, and really Pacific-focused, artist and knowledge to the inaugural exhibition. So we had a team of 2, which was dynamite. And then we were able to do another pre-biennial project. We historically brought Yayoi Kusama to Hawaii for the very first time. So in March of 2016, before Honolulu Biennial opened, our founding title sponsor, Howard Hughes Corporation, super generous, amazing folks, no relation. I learned later people thought I was connected to Howard Hughes, so I have to say there is no familial connection. They were able to help us bring Kusama, and that was sort of like the big project. It was an installation called Footprints of Life, and we did a variety of public programs around it that I think was like that last missing link that really made our community feel secure. Like, they can do this biennial, they brought Kusama here, and we had, I think 6 or 8 public programs. We received a great deal of press, and from then onwards, everything flowed. So, and flowed with just the tremendous effort of 110 volunteers. We swelled from a volunteer directorship of 2 women to then like a staff of, 50 or 70 people. My other co-founder, the other director, she's the brilliant brains of our business operations, so she'd have the right number for you. And we raised $2.7 million to make the first biennial happen, which was really dynamite. We ended in the black when we opened the biennial. We were like, can we even pay for all this? But thankfully, with an incredible team, and Scott Lorimore, our curator for the next biennial, he and his wife Yoko Ott moved home to work on it and bring their talents. So it's been a beautiful journey, and I guess if to sum up what I do is I love to advocate for Hawaii any way I can. I believe in our artists and our talents, and then for me, a little more personally, when it comes to jurying, for me, art is a vehicle to tell stories and to learn. So I'm not a juror who's attracted to things just on aesthetics. I think aesthetics and composition are incredibly important. I do not care. This is where I'm going to make all the haters, right? Because I'm going to tell you what I like and what I don't like. But I'll be honest so you know what type of juror you got. But I don't go for art that is purely conceptual. Although I love art that has a meaning and a story behind it, it's really looking for art that is that balance of a story, of something of substance, even if it's only important to the artist, like a story about their grandmother, that's okay. It doesn't need to be some piece about climate change or, stopping nuclear bombing. But as long as there's that content there, it pulls me in. And then that marriage between composition and aesthetics, which is so hard to talk about because it's incredibly subjective, but you can just tell when an artist has put thought into something. I innately believe that. So I guess that is what I will be looking for. I hear that there's a lot of submissions, and it's going to be very hard to whittle it down. And I think that's my non-planned talk of who I am, what I do, what I look for, and now you can ask me questions. Does that sound good? Okay, great. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, I came to your biennial thing, but I didn't get over there. What kind of work did you show at that?
Yeah, so Honolulu Biennial, we have a focus on representing the artists from the countries and cultures linked by the Pacific Ocean. So for the first biennial, and my role is not to curate it. What we do is every biennial, we bring in different curators. I'm more on the managerial, organizational, community development, fundraising end. So the first one was Fumio Nanjo and Nahiraka Basin, and they selected 33 artists from, I believe it was over 16 countries, might have been 17. About a third of the artists were from Hawaii, and the 2/3 of the art were all new commissions. So the theme, each biennial show has a theme, was middle of now, wait, we were saying it earlier, now, yeah, see, it's a tongue twister. But the idea was basically about, are we in the middle of nowhere or the center of everything? And I think that's a thought that a lot of us from here often have, because, you know, where you are from is the center of your world. My entire understanding of humanity is around this place. But at the same time, when you're from Hawaii, and that, you know, that angstiness of why we ended up founding a biennial came from everybody thought we were the middle of nowhere when it comes to art. So it's sort of a little bit of a spoof on that. And the art was largely related to issues and themes from across the Pacific. Big ones were the impact of migration, colonization, militarization, the environment. There was also a lot of playful work too, and sort of this reverence for nature that I think when you are in Hawaii you really have. So it was, I think that the curators did a really great job of that balance between like some really charged cerebral work and a lot that involved community in the engagement to make it. Like one artist, Alexander Lee, he did a piece all about Pere traveling from, you know, Tahiti, he's Chinese but from Tahiti, to Hawaii, and the impact of French nuclear bombing, and ulu, which is a canoe plant, which is also sustenance. So he had these huge ulu leaves. We ended up having to do an open call for volunteers to work with the artist for 4 nights to make the installation, and that was really special. Or a couple, Isabella and Alfredo Achilleson. They're, I think, probably, I mean, I hate saying like they're the most famous this artist or that, but they are undeniably the most famous Filipino artist working today. And they did a piece that was called Crossings, that was in honor of all those who migrated to Hawaii to work in the sugarcane plantation fields. And that was another piece, going back to community, that we had just community come and actually lend some family heirlooms, and they were put together like boats. And hearing stories, I mean, people would open up in such intimate, personal ways and cry and talk about their ancestors, and it also really related back to Hawaii and the history of Polynesian migration too. So, I mean, I'm just giving you a little taster of some of the works, but then there was some really just fun work. I mean, there was a group, Team Lab, where you would go into the exhibit, you would draw, they had these illustrations that were like geckos, butterflies, and so forth, and there was technology connected, so what you ended up coloring would be scanned and then start walking on the ground. But it was really neat because it was motion censored, and it would actually engage with your own movement. So it was neat when we had kids in to say, like, every step you take has an impact on the world. So think of every action. But it was completely psychedelic. I mean, we had a lot of people come in. And I don't know what they had smoked before, but they were having a lot of fun. And then it was a big crowd pleaser with the keiki, you know? So it was a really great mix. And Andrew had a dynamite installation in Foster Botanical Garden that would play with your senses, because from far away, you're like, this looks exactly like a stone. And when you get closer, it's a cloud. And yeah, it was beautiful. So it was very diverse and varied.
When is your next show, and are these juried shows or invitation shows?
That's a good question. So the next show, I can answer that part. So the next show is March 8th till May 5th, 2019. We will do the first press announcement at the end of March of this year with the artist list and some exhibition sites. We also are expanding to a neighbor island format. So the future of the biennial will be, Honolulu Biennial is centered in Honolulu, but there'll be a portion that will roam each iteration on a different island. I can't say which island yet, but hopefully we will be on Maui very soon. And then in terms of how it works, it's not juried. So what happens is our curators are appointed, and they spend intensive time researching. They put together a theme, and that will be announced in March as well. I think so our curators are Scott Lorimore. Some of you met him. He formerly was the director of the Fry Art Museum in Seattle and Jacob Lawrence Gallery. His wife Yoko is from here. They're very, longtime arts advocates and curators and incredible people. Very selfless. And then he's working with another curator, Nina Tonga. She's a curator at Te Papa Museum in Wellington. So she was here for 12 days recently. Before that, they were here for a period of like 8 days, going on multiple islands, doing research. Scott is also, he works at the Bishop Museum. So it's very thoughtfully researched. There is a private group of advisors. They're curatorial advisors who've lived and worked in the islands much longer. Some of them are born and raised here. And they also help send names and suggestions once they get an idea and a percolation of where the curatorial theme is going. So that's a little bit about the process. I mean, it's just, I guess it's like when you research a really good book, right? You kind of research your characters and your thought processes, and that's how it goes together. But some biennial models, they are open calls. It's something we've thought about in the future, but for now it's thematic and heavily pre-researched. Yeah?
Can you give an interpretation of what aesthetics, what you're calling aesthetics, as compared to a picture that tells a story or is on a journey?
Yeah. For me, aesthetics are just like an attention to the balance of composition, of color, of something visually engaging. I mean, it's very hard to use the term beautiful because, wabi-sabi is beautiful, and then traditional classical beauty is beautiful, but there is something that is visually compelling. And again, it's a very hard one to answer because it is so subjective and personal, but by aesthetics for me, it just is really that visual spark that gets you to pay attention, that you can tell there's some attention to detail, and that things aren't just, splattered on there for the hell of it. Does that help a little bit? It's hard being a juror, because it's like, shit, I really want to sound like very clear, but it is so personal at the same time, and there's not, if it's not a thematic exhibition.
One of my thoughts for years, and I brought it up to different panels,
Yeah.
I consider what you're doing, curating, not jurying, is my personal. And I've had many of the jurors go, no, we're jurying. And with the way you talk about the aesthetics, I mean, I like coffee, you like tea. No matter what I do with coffee, you're never going to like coffee, pretty much.
Yeah.
Do you feel more curatorial, or do you feel more juror, or how do you?
Yeah, no.
Or how do you differentiate those two definitions?
Yeah, and do you guys mind if I sit down? I was really unwell this week, so I'm feeling a little like not so well still, so I'm gonna just sit down. Okay, but hopefully you can hear me. It's funny because I actually asked Rose. I was like, ooh, can I make a theme? So could it be more, curated? Because one of the challenges, I was a co-juror for Contact. If you have not applied to Contact, have you guys heard of Contact? Oh, you should definitely apply. It's an exhibit that takes place every year in usually April, sometimes in March, and it's themed on the impact of contact in Hawaii. And it's at the, I want to say Linikona, but what's the new name? The Honolulu Museum of Art School. It's organized by Pu'uhonua Society, Miley Meyer. But I was co-juring that with Dr. Herman P. K. Clark, and it was funny because that one, although it's a juried show, it is with a theme in mind, so it felt much more like curating because we were trying to basically put together a narrative, and there were these groupings. We even were involved with the process of where the works would be placed, so you'd go throughout the gallery and there'd be these different story pools. I think when it's more a free flow juring in this case, it wouldn't be fair for me to curate because then I'd come in with a preconception of I'm going to be looking for work that really is telling this story, so I'm not going at it at all from a curatorial place. It's really just about looking for artwork that, has the story to tell me in some way, and then there is that interesting aesthetic, that attention to detail, that obvious skill. So, no, for me, I think this is definitely juring. Yeah, well.
It's interesting to hear of your political and when I think of contemporary living American political artists, I think mostly of cartoonists. Are there political artists that speak to you or tell their critique from whatever perspective on society that you would like to name?
Yeah, well, that's a very long list, sir. There are so many. But okay, I'll give you a quick 5. Okay, so definitely top of the list, Brett Graham. He was in Honolulu Biennial. He had a great piece that my 5-year-old son really loved. Brett Graham, about Kaho'olawe and being used as a place to test bombs. That was an incredibly impactful piece, and I'm really excited because the piece is staying in Hawaii. A patron ended up purchasing it, and they're going to put it in a public space. I can't say anything because obviously there's going to be a big press release about it, but I'm so happy that work is here. And then I'm a really big fan of the artist Amar Al-Baik. He's a Syrian artist. He's someone I've worked with before, and I've written about him, and he's talked a lot about what's going on in Syria and Bashar, and has a really political practice, and also the plight of refugees. So those are my top 2. I'm now trying to be like, who would be my next? It's really hard.
Like Doonesbury, some other cartoonists that
Yeah.
are commentators in America. But when I think of, Picasso in World War II, are there artists?
Yeah, and Guernica, of course. Yeah. That.
Who do we have now?
Yeah. I mean, I guess some of my reference points are a little more, I don't want to say that obscure, because then that's like saying that there is like this one commodified, artist and culture represented, but my reference points for political artists tend to be artists from the Pacific and the Middle East. And hopefully one day everyone will know them and think of them. It's an interesting conversation about artists and where they're from. I was recently having this discussion with a woman, a Native Hawaiian arts administrator. We were talking about how so many artists, they don't want this emphasis on where they're from or their identity. And then other artists, they really want that to be in the bio. And when I was living in the Middle East, that was always the question when I was a journalist and I would talk to artists. I'd say, hey, listen, I'm doing this piece about your work. How do you want to be represented? I know you're Palestinian, or I know you're Syrian, but do you want this to be a focal point? And I have long believed, especially when it's about political art, to listen to the artist and say, like, if they really want to talk about their heritage and their background, reflect that. And if not, it's just a statement, but they don't want to make it coming from that personal place, to listen to them. Sorry, my off-tangent reply. What other questions? Yes, sir.
What kind of experience would you like the viewers who come to look at the show to go away with after going through?
Oh, that's so easy, to feel something. I feel like this entire digital existence is just ruining society, and everyone's just scrolling really quickly and consuming and not really pausing to feel. I mean, I really, really believe in the experience of going into an exhibition and being present. I think society is definitely for the worse right now, in this constant need to like move to the next thing, click, like, and it's so important. When I take my own family to a museum, I'm like, tell my husband, I'm like, we are not going on our phones right now until the very end of the show, and then we can take photos of our favorite one. You saw me do that. We saw the whole Schaefer Portrait Challenge, great work, and I didn't do anything with my phone till the very end, because I don't know, I feel like we've lost that ability, especially this younger generation that I think we're called digital natives. So, no, really, I've heard it, like digital natives. But I really want people to feel, to feel something. I felt a lot walking on that Portrait Schaefer Challenge. I felt joy, I felt sadness, I felt empathy. There was some really great work in there, and it was clear, like I could, just the way the artist was capturing the portraits, there was something that moved me to the work. And then when I read the statement, of course, I felt a hell of a lot more, and we almost had to go out for a cry, didn't we? Yeah. So, to feel something, to be present, that's what I hope. I mean, it doesn't have to be happiness or sadness, but to pause for a moment. Any other questions? Yes? Yeah.
What about minimalism? Minimalism does tell a story.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big McCracken fan. I mean, I love minimalism too. There definitely can be a story in minimalism. I mean, for me, minimalism is always, as someone who's quite hyper and high energy, the story has been much more about the relationship between the minimalist work, and I tend to be drawn to minimalist sculpture and the environment and how it makes me feel in a space, or just being, again, that presence that I keep looking for. But it's not the most narrative work, and for me in general, if it's painting, minimalism, I mean, I'm just being, personal and honest here. When I'm encounter minimalist sculpture, I find it to have a really profound storytelling effect, the way placements of minimalist sculptures go.
Right, that's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about, sculpture, because there's
Yeah.
there's peace in minimalist sculpture. There's something to be said about that rather than because a lot of our environment is minimalist.
Mhm.
And the way we alter our environment tends to make it more ornate, and if we left it the way it was, then it would be more minimalist.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's so.
No, I agree. I mean, one of my favorite experiences of 2017 was going to Sugimoto's new private museum. And although most people know him as a photographer, it's basically like a foundation that he's created in Odawara outside of Tokyo. And the most amazing pieces were these like minimalist architecture, sculpture, reverence for the environment. And there was absolutely a story. It was almost like the minimalist sculpture and architecture he was doing was further highlighting the story that already was there, the nature. So.
Because there's introversion in minimalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's I think the whole thing of telling a story is complicated because it's the person's story. So.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good thought to share, and I'm glad you brought that up. I will think about it. Thank you. Oh.
I'm just curious, I might have been in your speech, but are you a working artist now? And in general, are you drawn more to a particular media or two-dimensional versus three-dimensional art? Or in general, I mean, I'm sure you like all kinds of things, but...
Yeah. No, I'm a failed artist. We had that discussion earlier. I wanted to be an artist. I didn't get into any shows. I had that great professor tell me I should probably not be a professor. So no, but I wish I was an artist. I have such respect for artists. And then in terms of medium, for me personally, I am very much drawn to sculpture, installation, photography. That is what I tend to collect. Those are my preferred mediums. It was really refreshing going into the portrait challenge because there was so much good painting. Painting it's always been hard for me to be drawn to painting because, when you think of great historical painting and a lover of art history, so much has already been done. It's really rare for me to be astounded by painting. But God, there were 4 incredible pieces in that portrait challenge. And that was a lot more than I would generally ever love when I see painting. Painting's the hardest medium for me, I will be honest. But that's who I am, what I'm drawn to. Oh, this woman has had her hand up for a while back. But,
I wanted to make a comment on her idea of minimalism. And
Yeah.
I was thinking that our world right now is so full of crisis and distraction and confusion that sometimes we're so drawn to minimalism just to have that second to just have that thought go from one ear to the other.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's what I'm in minimalism. That's definitely what resonates with me. The silence almost. Yes, sir.
What is your favorite artists looking through the history of art? Do you have some of them? You study a lot.
My absolute favorite artist, Herminus Bosch. I know, but I could go to the Prado a million times and Herminus Bosch. Herminus Bosch. Harmonious. See, you're pronouncing better than harmonious. Hieronymus? Hieronymus. We got it. Oh my God. But that Garden of Earthly Delights.
That's not minimalist.
No, that is far from minimalist. But it is one of the few works that I can look at again and again and every single time see something new. It's like a grown-up, sophisticated version of Where's Waldo. No, it really is. It is truly an incredible work. No, sorry, that painting just sticks out, and it's a long-running joke with my father and I about that work. Oh goodness, there are just so many. I mean, I love, and I'm going to butcher all the names because it's been a decade since, school, but I love Artemisia Gentileschi, of course, and her being a woman in the Renaissance. Who can pronounce her last name better than me? Who remembers? No one from art history, but I'm a big fan of hers. I really love the Shahnameh, an Islamic miniature painting. Big fan of that, especially the Ilkhanid Shahnameh. I know that's a little perhaps obscure. There, I'm using that word again. I'm just trying to think. I mean, it's really hard to say. It's much easier for me to say what I don't like. Actually, that's much easier. I do not like Pissarro. Pissarro, no, not a big fan. I'm not a big pointillist fan in general. I really abhor Jeff Koons. He came to the show I curated, actually, at the U.S. Ambassador's house, and it was really cool to have a photo with him and have everybody write, but his work does not do it for me whatsoever, and he's like really like a Stepford wife, like really. He's not, no, this is on film. He's never going to be in the Honolulu Biennial. No. But he's a great businessman. Great, as my entrepreneur hat, great businessman. No, I'm just trying to think what artists I'm not big fans of. Yeah, it's hard to be on the spot like this. Sorry. Yeah. But I'll have the conversation off the record of everyone that I absolutely love and what I really hate. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, technically, I fundraise for a living to make the biennial happen, so I have to be pretty PC.
Thank you. About contemporary or abstract art, like Dali, that kind of thing. Does that appeal to you at all?
You know, growing up, those were some of my favorite periods. I mean, I was really, before Dali, I was really into Surrealist, particularly Arshile Gorky, and the Surrealist Manifesto, and Andre Breton, yeah. So, I mean, that was, and then that went into Dali. So that was, I mean, when I think of my first thoughts, and I was always interested in history and like thinking about historically during that time period, how proper and, you know, stuffy everything was and how crazy these artists were to do that. So yeah, very much appeals to me. And I love Egyptian modernist painting. A lot of Egyptian modernists are pretty incredible. Edward Said. And Mahmoud Said, Edward is the writer, Mahmoud is the painter. Yeah.
Not to get too personal, but you mentioned you have an affinity for photography and collect photography.
I do.
Would you be willing to share some of the people you're watching or collect?
There's a lot of them. Again, I apologize. In my collection right now, I've got GCC Collective. I would love if I could. I'm really into this collective called the Propeller Group. They had a great piece in the Yokohama Triennial last year, and then the year before that in 2016, probably one of the best shows I've seen in the 21st century. It was at the Chicago Contemporary Museum, the Propeller Group. If you haven't checked out the Propeller Group, I am such a fan of their work at this moment in time. And then Sama Al-Shaibi, the artist that I worked with for many years, of course, I love her photography. I have her in my collection. Yeah, those are a few names. Yeah. I wish there were more photographers out of Hawaii. I'm interested in watching this young woman, Ulani Davis. She lives on Oahu. She's done some neat work. She teaches at Kamehameha schools. She's really neat. But I'm always looking for more local Hawaii photographers. So I love hearing if anyone has names to check out. Also, photography is one of the best mediums when you're a young collector. It's the most accessible. Yes, exactly.
Could you give me a definition of conceptual art?
For me, it's really broad. It's just something that there's a thought behind merely aesthetics, or like saying I want to just paint something that's red or make a big rock sculpture out of a rock. Like there's an actual idea behind it. There's here I'm getting better. I'm getting clear for you. That we want there's either an emotion or a story or a feeling or a point that is meant to be communicated. Is that clear enough? Good. You wouldn't believe it, guys. I suffer from these terrible migraines. I actually get aphasia. So I have aura migraines, and this past week I had 5. I've had 11 since Christmas. I was so nervous to give this talk. I'm a very verbal person, and I love public speaking and like public life, but I was really nervous, and I was telling Rose about it, and I couldn't even speak on Friday. I was in the ER. It's these terrible migraines. So you guys are such a great audience, because I've had this for 10 years, and after you have like an attack, you get really nervous to do public talking, because you're like, I lost my marbles. But thank you for being so awesome and getting my groove back after way too many in 1 week. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that you're very eloquent.
Oh, well, thank you.
It's been extremely nice to hear your energy and your enthusiasm for it.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. You wouldn't have believed on Friday. Thank you. Really, I couldn't even talk on Friday. It was like,
Hard to believe.
and it was awful. And it's really crazy. But you guys have gotten me over my anxiety. So thank you so much. Such a great audience. And good questions. And I'm thinking more about minimalism and how that relates. I really liked your point, though, about just the idea of storytelling. And you've made me rethink through just being here how often the minimalist sculpture, to me now, really is highlighting the story that already was in that space when it's great minimalist sculpture. Yes, sir.
You're welcome to say this is a dumb question, but...
No, nothing's dumb. I really do believe nothing's dumb. No, not possible.
Oh, it's a wonderful question.
Good.
All Hawaiian Islands have their own character, unique character.
Mm-hmm.
So do the people who live on those places. You're going to come here and look at Maui art, and you have a really, of course, global background, but primarily Honolulu.
Yeah, I'm an Oahu-centric. So why I'm so happy to be here.
I can't help it.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts about what you're getting into here?
Well, I want to say I feel so privileged to be asked because, Honolulu Biennial, we named it Honolulu because all biennials or biennales are named after the main city, but they take place and they expand, and that's the vision that we're trying to grow. And there's been some great enthusiasm here on Maui that I have a feeling we will be in Maui soon. But it's such a privilege when I have opportunities to go to the neighbor islands and learn more about the artists and the communities, although, full disclosure, I have zero influence on curatorial. I always know the curators, and once I know a theme, if there are artists that I know, I can recommend. So to me, this is just like studying up, and I really am almost embarrassed by how the islands are they operate almost like their own little countries. There is such a disconnect between the artist scenes, the whole thing. It's insane. But then I really want to tell Hawaiian Airlines, why can't we have like a 10 card where you buy 10 tickets and then you get one free? Because it just make it a lot easier, right? For Kama'aina only, like you have to show something to officially, you know what I mean? Like I'm a hotels.com member because if you book 10 nights, you get one free. But on that note, my introduction to Maui artists has been fairly limited. What I do know about the people I know from the art scene in Maui is they have incredibly profound ways of speaking about their work. There seems to almost be, I can't now make comparisons, especially because this is being filmed. See, if you guys didn't film, I'd be much more entertaining speaker. I try to be PC. But when I talk to artists from Maui, there seems to be just a very much of a reverence for their work and taking the time to explain it to me in a way that they really want me to feel and understand it. It's not such a quick let me give you the quick sell because you might be able to help me out and get me something. I don't mean to say artists in Honolulu are like that. I didn't say that, but there's just something so real when I have conversations with artists and the creative community here. I just feel like you really want to connect, and it's not about what I can do for you or you can do for me. It's that you have this incredible practice, or you're a curator or you're a director of a gallery, and you want to share that with me just for the sake of that connection, and I really honor and value that. So, thank you.
Hi.
Yeah.
I just had one more question, and you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to. I think we're all kind of curious about what you're attracted to, and you said you really cared for 4 pieces in the portrait challenge. Would you like to share which ones?
Should I get my phone out and and tell you which artist I really loved the work? Is that bad? Is that totally not PC? I swear you guys should have filmed this. That'd be a lot more fun. Okay, I'll tell you the 4 artists that I really loved. One moment. Let me get my phone. And there were many good artists, but now I'm getting nervous. There were many good artists, but there were 4 that it was if I could own these, I would want to own these. Does that make sense? You can appreciate so much art, but then there's the one that you're I really want to take this home. Okay, So I really loved the work by, oh, now I'm getting nervous to read it out loud. Okay, so Patricia Arroyo. I really loved William Houston's work. Linda Whitmore. And Kirk Kurokawa. Yeah.
You did Governor Abercrombie.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, those were the four that they were, and in all different ways, those 4 pieces made me feel something, very different works, and I wanted to take them home.
Whittemore to Kirk is very different. So that's
Yeah.
a big spectrum.
Have you seen Art MAUI in the past?
I have not. I have only been here and seen the Schaefer Challenge in the past. I've never seen Art MAUI, but I did watch part of Sally's juror talk just because she's my friend, and it was on her Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, and then have you ever gone up to the MAUI Visual Arts Center and seen their shows?
I have.
Yeah.
I really love the Hui.
Are you going to see the show that's there now?
I'm not, unfortunately, but I would like to go. I have 2 young children, and my husband's on Kauai, and my dad is babysitting both of the little rascals alone. So I have to, after this, hop back. Yeah. Thank you.
Another question. So I just want to understand. So there's no theme for
There is
this
not.
year. Pretty much your preferences would be kind of like the
Basically.
from the questions that everybody tried to figure what your understanding the art is, more of a
But you should just be you, you know?
I understand that, but if I work with, with a few different themes and like I'm interested in the process of art,
Mm-hmm.
maybe when it comes up, it's just like Jackson Pollock probably wouldn't be chosen by you to be in the show because it wouldn't be your favorite, it's not much feeling, but so generally speaking, there's no theme, it's just the best we understand of art is.
Yeah, I think that is, right?
There's never been a theme for
Just kind of a question and statement. The worst work I've ever made is when I've made work to try to please a juror.
That is such a good point, though.
For my
Yep.
own, what I do, I'll make good work and she'll either like it or he'll like it or not. But when I try to dissect what's in your brain,
Oh, yeah.
I just lose my mind and I make it.
Exactly. And the truth is like, this isn't going to make or break your career. If you get in, it's going to be awesome. And if you don't, you're getting into something else that's going to be awesome. So,
So this might.
yeah.
Make what you love.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, I always have a hard time whittling it down when I juror. Yes, it's really hard. Is there a limit how many works can get in?
There's not a limit. But
Yeah.
There's a good amount of work that'll work in this space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah? All pow? Yeah. Well, you guys have been so awesome. Thanks for giving my confidence back. Thank you.